is Curtis Davis. I'm 25 years old and I'm a local national spoken word poet here in Tampa, Florida.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you love about poetry?
I love that poetry for me and a lot of other people helps them find their voice. Even if it's not on stage or in front of other people, it helps them find their voice on the page and just in general, finding out what their thoughts look like as a form of art, really. And it helps people tap into a lot of the times their most like vulnerable and genuine selves, because most of the time when you're writing, no one's around you or anything. You're just in your own space, and it allows you to really, as we like to say a lot, get free. That's my favorite thing about poetry.
That's beautiful. When did you get started doing poetry?
I got started doing poetry in high school, really a little bit before high school, but I really started writing it when I became a freshman at Blake. I started writing really stories at first. I really wanted to write like movies and things like that when I was in middle school. So I would start off by just what I thought in my head was like a movie, but it was really just kind of like a story on paper. And I put chapters and everything like that. But I went to Blake it's a school for the arts, and I went there for creative writing. I submitted maybe one poem with the rest of my stories or whatever, and I got into the writing program. And once we started actually taking the class and everything like that, they gave us writing poems as assignments, and that's kind of how I started with actually writing poetry for real. And then I discovered spoken word poetry through YouTube and Def Poetry Jam, seeing Saul Williams perform and other people. Then once I discovered spoken word poetry, I dug even deeper into that as far as looking up other videos and other spoken word poets. And then I knew that I wanted to do that with my poetry. So then I started working on memorizing my poems. So it all really started my freshman year of high school. And then I got a little bit even more deeper into it when I was a junior in high school and started going to Heard Him Say and competing in poetry slams and adult poetry slams, and going off to Break New Voices and everything like that. And 2010 was my first year at Break New Voices.
That's what's up. Well, how did you get involved with the poetry community?
Well, firstly, it was really all through, I would have to say, I Heard Him Say, because I had a friend at school who told me about Heard Him Say. I went to Heard Him Say, which for those who don't know is a youth poetry open mic here in Tampa. It's Tampa's only youth poetry open mic. And once I went there, I met Wally B. He told me about Sacred Grounds. Sacred Sounds at Sacred Grounds Coffee House. And then once I went there and I started slamming there, I started meeting a bunch of other poets, older poets and things like that. But that's really what started me getting involved with the poetry community, was going to Heard Him Say and going out to Sacred Sounds and competing in the poetry slams.
Where would you say that you found your poetic voice?
I would say I found my poetic voice I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess it's more so like not finding a poetic voice, but finding like my real voice. So like my poetry, my poetic voice is like my most real. I would say my most real self. And so it's really just finding when I found my real voice, and I don't think there was like one specific moment. It was a lot of different things that led up to me finding my real voice. And I think a lot of the trouble that newer poets go through is finding their real voice and leaving that like quote unquote poetic voice behind. And when you do find your real voice, if you're a poet, it's going to be your poet voice, but you know, it's actually just your most true self. And there was a lot of things and a lot of trials and tribulations that took me to finding my real voice and my true self, and being able to be that on stage rather than being what I thought I should present myself as, or what I saw other people doing, and just being me when I'm speaking.
I got you. So would you say kind of like getting your poetry voice is kind of like you understanding who you are?
Yeah, and it's when you're performing, it all really depends on the type of poem you're doing. So if you're doing a poem that's your true story and it's a vulnerable piece, then you want to be able to tap into that, your true self, and show that to your audience, so that way you're making a real connection with them. But there's a whole nother side to where if you're more so actually putting on a performance, and you're doing, let's say, a persona poem where you're actually literally playing out a character that you wrote, it's two totally different things. And being able to decipher or determine which one of those you're using when you're performing, it's all an art form in itself, and it takes a lot of time to really master, I would say.
Who would you say is your biggest inspiration?
I guess I would have to say my dad is my biggest inspiration. And I say that because I found myself like using him as inspiration for a lot of my work, just naturally, not as a thought out thing, but like he's inspired me in a lot of different ways, and just how he came up and the life that he has lived, and how hard he's worked to give like me and my brother and my sister and my mom like a life that we could really enjoy and live out and be prosperous. And he still like works hard to this day, like out there grinding every day, trying to make money to put food on the table type thing. And just seeing how he never quits, like that really inspires me to kind of do the same. And I guess naturally as a son, like I take a lot of his values and things like that as my own. And but just he's just such a hard person, but he has grown so much, like because he had me when he was young. Him and my mom had me when they were young, so I've been able to kind of see him grow as a person, and to see like where he was, and not like materialistically or anything, just like, you know, soul, like his soul, and how he interacts with other people, and how he is with himself, and with my mom, and just with my siblings and things like that. And just seeing where he came from to where he is now, it's inspiring to see the growth of a person, and that person be my father. And he's still growing to this day, and still learning and things like that. But to see where I keep saying this, but to see where he started and to see where he is now, it's inspiring for me to go through a similar transformation, but even on a greater scale, because he's grown to a point where he's able to put me in a position to where I can get even further in life. And that's inspiring me for me to actually do so, and make it to where he can, when he's an old man, he can look back and be like, you know, he did good, and now he's straight because he raised me enough to make it to where he can be, where I can make it to where he's straight, you know. So yeah, I would say my dad is probably my biggest inspiration.
What would you say was your biggest milestone with your craft?
Um, biggest milestone. I guess it would probably be like most recently with um, me going out to San Diego and making final stage at iWhips. Um, just because my craft is spoken word poetry and slam poetry, and the fact that I was able to go out there on my own and really um, make myself proud felt really good because a lot of the times I've like dedicated so much time to like a team effort with team poetry slams and I'm like really community driven and I'm all about like us making it as a unit, as a group, and as a community, so that I pour myself into a lot of different things, a lot of other people, and then to like say, okay, I'm gonna focus on me and do this for me and also like keeping in mind that I'm doing it for my city at the same time, but a lot of it was for me and I like proved a lot to myself on that trip. Not even just like making it to final stage, but just in my interactions with the other poets and the other people in the community that I've never met before and things like that. I've always been a shy person, and it's taken a lot of years for me to really come out of my shell. And that whole trip was like it gave me a good picture of how much I've developed as an artist and as a person and as a man. Um, just like going that far on a trip, like just alone, like take the poetry out of it, just me going that far on a trip on my own, which I've done so before, like going to California, like I went to Oakland on my own to visit Eric or whatever. Shout out to Gravity, but to visit Gravity, but to go there for the like on a mission, like I was on a mission kind of thing, and like I felt like I completed the mission, and to like accomplish what you sought out to do is a really great feeling, and I feel like I so much in my career as far as like with slam poetry, I've gone for after that mission and have failed. So to go on that mission and a lone mission like by myself and complete it and feel accomplished and come back and be able to you know have my people not only tell my people that like I had them on my back, but like I represented them well, which I would I have been able to do no matter how well I did in the competition. But just the fact that I did well in the competition and um, sat at the table with other really great artists, and knowing that I belong there was a good feeling. So that's probably like one of the biggest milestones in my poetic career.
Gotcha. Um, when would you say you decided to take your art seriously?
Probably my first, I would have to say probably that first year going to Brave New Voices. Um, because before going to Brave New Voices, it would just seem like which it still kind of is, but it seemed like such a niche thing that I was into, like a small group of people that was into this art form. But when I went to Brave New Voices, I found that like there's a whole world of people who are into it, and that it's an actual thing, and that there's people who make whole careers off of it, and being a part of workshops led by people who have made careers out of it, and seeing it right in front of me, right before my eyes, and I got to see some of like my favorite poets perform there as well, and not even just perform, but just being in their presence was just a crazy experience for me. So it just solidified that it's real and that it is doable, and that there is a whole community or world of people out there who are out there doing it. So after that trip and really seeing it for myself, I knew that if not as a career thing, I knew that it was going to be something that I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I know that to be true because I'm still doing it to this day, and I have a lot of people who are actually surprised at the fact that I'm still doing it. And I'm starting, like, as of lately, I'm starting to understand where they're coming from, because I know, because even I'm feeling it for myself. It's hard to just keep going, keep the flame going, but I know that I just have this like sense of without poetry, like I wouldn't be who I am. So I feel like if I left it alone, like I wouldn't be me anymore. So I know that, like, I just have this thing in my head where it's like me and poetry they just go hand in hand. So I can't really see myself without poetry in my life. But I would have to say when I first started taking poetry seriously, it was that first year going to Brave New Voices, my junior year of high school, and experiencing that life-changing event of belonging and realization that, you know, there is a whole world of people who are like me and understand the way I think and have the same interests as me and things like that. That is what catapulted me to wanting to keep doing these competitions and traveling and wanting to spit everywhere, because I know that no matter where I go, there's going to be somebody who will be able to connect with what I'm saying. And I learned that by going to Brave New Voices and traveling and performing in another city for the first time and things like that.
It sounds like you had like a really hard shell that you kind of put yourself into when you were younger, and it almost seems like that poetry and Heard 'Em Say was like a catalyst for you to get out of that shell. So was that like a milestone, like a huge milestone for you to make it to Brave New Voices and to be around all of those people?
Yeah, I mean, even back then, as I was speaking, like, I've always had, like you said, I've always been in kind of a shell. It's taken a lot for me to get out of that shell. But like that isn't really so much true for the stage. Like, performance wise, I've always like been naturally drawn to like the stage, like performing. And of course, it took a lot of time for me to perfect that skill and fully come out of my shell. But what really got me into my shell is like regular interaction with people, as opposed to like performing in front of people. So like I can perform in front of you, but then get off stage and go and try to have a conversation and not be able to like utter two like sensible words together. So it took a lot, and I'm still like learning to this day, because I find myself reverting back into that shell, to where like I could even though I had that great experience, as I was just talking about with Brave New Voices, even in all of that, I was still kind of like quiet and not really talking to a whole lot of people. Like, even though I was experiencing like all this like connection and belonging, it was still hard for me to like just have a normal conversation with people. And I would say definitely poetry has helped me with coming out of that. But funny enough, is I feel like it's also been like my work side, like working in customer service, has definitely helped with that as well.
Yeah.
Which I've always like tried to keep that in mind when like living my day to day. Like every lesson that I learn in life can be applied to my poetic career, my artistic career. So I definitely like acknowledge the fact that when I'm interacting with people at work, it helps me interact with anybody else outside of that realm, like just networking in general. So I've consciously worked on trying to be better at interacting with people, and it just takes the same kind of like thing as it takes to get up on stage and perform. It takes the same kind of like guts to get yourself to go out there and just talk to somebody and have a conversation with them. So it took a lot of me putting myself in those positions and just like just saying, screw it, just walk up to them, and just start talking and just say, hey, and not always does it go the way you want it to go, but when it does, it feels good and it helps you better for the next conversation or next time you run into somebody. So, but heard him say and brave new voices and poetry definitely has helped me come out of my show and so many more ways than just one, for sure.
That's amazing. So you've done a lot of writing, and you're considered one of the best in the world, or the best in the country, With that being true, what is your process for writing a poem?
My process for writing a poem is very unstructured, and it's changed or developed over the years, of course. Mm-hmm. But I have many different processes. I would say my favorite process or the best process for me personally is when it just comes out, like mm-hmm. when there's no there's not too much thought that goes into the idea or the concept of the poem, and it just hits me. But I've noticed or I've learned that over the years, because that's how it always starts out when you're first writing, or at least that's how it was for me when I first started writing. But over the years, it doesn't always hit you as often as it used to. So over the years, I've had to learn different processes of how to write poems, because it's not just coming to me as it would before. So having to just delve into different topics that I wouldn't normally write about, because those things that just come to your head are the things that you just feel. So having to think about certain things that I actually genuinely care about, because for me, a lot of my life I've not cared about a lot of things. So it's and that may sound bad, but I've always been an emotional person or emotional kid. So I've pushed a lot of those feelings out. So a lot of the times I've taught myself to just not care about things, but then that translated into a lot of the rest of the world, outside of just things that affect me in my little day-to-day life. So it's I've had to, and this is a good thing about poetry as well for me, because it when thinking of what I want to write about or different concepts or things like that, it forces me to think about things that I genuinely care about that I wouldn't normally just have on my mind, mm-hmm. which I feel is different than a lot of other poets, but a lot of people have different processes or whatnot. But my process is ever changing, and most of the time I start off with a concept. So I'm always trying to really think outside of the box, and because I have been doing this for so long, I want to always think of something that I haven't seen before, because I don't want to just mimic or feel like I'm biting off another poet's idea. So I'm constantly trying to think of a way to tackle a topic or an idea in a way that hasn't been done so before. So a lot of my pieces, you'll see that in a lot of my pieces. I'll try and think of some performance aspect that you haven't seen before, or some writing concept that hasn't been heard before, which is so hard to do because everything's been heard before and everything's been done before already, but just figuring out your own little tweak on that, which is also sometimes a hindrance for me, because I'll get so caught up on making a unique concept that I get frustrated with it and then let it go and not end up actually following through with the poem, or the topic gets dated and then too much time passes by and it's not even worth writing about anymore. So it can be a hindrance sometimes, because I get so caught up on the concept of the piece rather than just getting the words out. But I'm trying to work on a new process to where I basically think of a concept or an idea, and then do the research on it, and kind of structure everything around the research. But I'm kind of like just rattling on now, but yeah, I just my process is ever changing, and I'm trying to figure out new processes all the time of writing a piece, and figuring out what process works best for me now, because as I change as an artist and as a person, my process has to change as well, and I don't really even have a choice in the matter because it has to change, or else I won't get any writing done. So, yeah.